I love when coaches, consultants, and professional service providers want to do big things in their business. They want to rise to the top and influence their market and the world around them. They want to have a greater impact and make a more lucrative income. Well, if this is you, welcome to Expert in You podcast, the show where I interview other experts and coaches, consultants, so that they can share their success strategies with you. We're going to talk about marketing and how to close more sales, how to get more premium clients, and how to really build your visibility in the market and scale your business like a boss. If this is you, welcome to the show. I want to ask you to subscribe and hit the notification bell right now so you don't miss one episode. Grab your coffee and buckle up because we are ready to give it all to you to help you become the expert and get paid as the expert that you are. Hi, everyone. I want to welcome you back to another episode of Expert in You podcast. I'm your host, Ann Carden. And this week, I am interviewing someone who just comes with massive experience, so much knowledge, and I am excited to have her on my show, Dana Goodyear. Dana, welcome to my show.
Well, thanks for having me.
She is, let me just give you a quick rundown of what Dana does. So she has 22 years of experience in education, and she's taught both world languages and English and has worked in both middle and elementary school level as an administrator. She has completed her doctorate degree in educational leadership, and that was in 2020. She often speaks at conferences, providing educators and techniques to minimize off-task behavior and to increase time on task. She often writes blogs for the Teach Better team and is the author of an upcoming book for educators to be published called Road to Awesome. I can't wait to hear more about that. And she is the host of the Out of Trenches podcast, which features educators who share their stories in resiliency. You can follow her on Twitter and you can find her website. We'll post all of that with the show links. So again, Dana, welcome. I'm excited to have you here today.
Well, thanks for having me on. Just a clarification, the book is called Out of the Trenches, Stories of Resilient Educators. It's to be published by Road to Awesome Publishing.
Okay.
Yeah, there's another book called Road to Awesome by the man who owns a publishing company. So just to clarify that.
Okay. Well, we want to make sure. I'm glad you clarified that. So thank you for that. Okay, perfect. So let's jump in. You have been consulting for how many years, Dana?
So I started speaking at conferences and reaching out to schools about 5 years ago, so in 2017. And I went to a training, basically got my feet wet in professional speaking. At that point, I had been, in teaching for about 17 years and, hadn't really done much speaking at the school level. So I started speaking at conferences and offering services to come into schools and give them professional development. So that didn't really take off too much until actually around the pandemic, when I think a lot of people who are independent consultants did get more work. And, I think that is just because of the need for that training, right? The need for, teachers had that extra time, administrators had some downtime. Right. So I did a lot of just speaking, virtually webinar type things. And then this past school year, a few more, in-person opportunities to work with districts. And, so it's something that's kind of evolved over the past 5 years.
And it will continue to do that for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Because the need shifts, right? There's ebbs and flows in terms of what schools need in terms of training and their staffing and what the knowledge of their staffing is, the skill level as well.
Yes. So I love that you, like one of the things that I teach is to take your expertise, your experience, everything that you've done, I call it career collateral, and turn that into really a consulting business. And that's exactly what you did. What made you decide to go that path and get really kind of out of the education system in the way that you were doing it previously? Well,
I've been still in the education system, off and on. I've kind of been in and out. I'm currently back in the education system, but so I'm doing kind of both at the same time. But it's also what made me want to kind of get out and speak is the fact that I had all this expertise to share from classroom experience, right? I've always gone to conferences. I've always listened to people speak, and I wanted to share my experience and give people anecdotes of what had happened in my classroom and help people that way. When they come with questions, when they have teachers that need coaching, when there's specific situations that they don't know how to handle and they have questions about that. So, as I see the evolving needs in education and, how everything's looked so uncertain during the pandemic, being kind of in that space as well right now helps me know kind of what's going on, what a typical school might look like in terms of, the staff. A lot of the time, the staff morale also is a big factor. Right. And also turnover is a big factor right now as well. So it could determine if people are going to fund professional development. And although sometimes it is, it's up to the department, it could be also the district. So a particular school might need something, but the district is the deciding factor. Does the school get the training or not? Or it could be a group of teachers in a specific subject area within that district. So I think just kind of knowing the needs of various grade levels at this point and what people are using to assess students helps a lot as well. And seeing teachers in a building and kind of their level of burnout, I think that's
right. And I think it's even more now, isn't it? And
not that teachers weren't burned out before the pandemic, but they're definitely expressing more levels of burnout.
True.
And I think this year as well, teachers are having a lot more difficulties with classroom management. And that's something I speak on, because of the shift back from remote learning to in-person learning.
And some of them are still hybrid anyway, aren't they?
No, this past school year, pretty much all districts have been full in person.
Okay.
But this fall, when I was speaking, there were a lot of teachers. It was like they'd gone back to, their first year of teaching because the kids had forgotten how to act in a classroom in person.
Does not sound fun.
Yeah, there were so many kids that had their cameras turned off and especially the middle school and high school kids, right? They weren't really paying attention to the lessons that were online. So being in a classroom and be expected to be engaged, right? That was what teachers were having difficulties with.
Yeah. It's interesting how coming through the pandemic, a lot of coaching and consulting businesses soared, and then others kind of fell apart, and they ended up going back and getting jobs. So you took the leap into consulting work. Let's talk about the business structure just a little bit, and what were some of the challenges that you faced when you first decided that you were going to do this on your own, and why did you really decide that you wanted to do your own business versus just working?
I wanted to do it on my own because I wanted to be my own boss and, decide kind of how much I was going to do, how often, who I was going to reach out to. And as educational consultants, it's usually done in a kind of a vacuum. There are some places that hire several consultants, maybe up to 50, and then they might divvy up some tasks between those people. And then kind of some of the challenges at the beginning were just not having that marketing experience. So as an educator, that's not really something, unless you're a business teacher, really something you learn, right? Yeah. So it's basically putting yourself out there and also finding places to speak and finding places to connect, right? I mean, I've been on LinkedIn forever and Facebook forever, but I didn't think about going on Twitter until 2017, right? And then once I got my podcast up, I went on Instagram as well. But I think reaching out also helped, promote my podcast when I started my podcast 2 years ago, because I had that marketing experience. And then making graphics, putting out visuals on the social media channels, promoting your work, website. The website was a challenge, right? I didn't have any experience building a website, so making sure I have the right content for that and keeping it updated and posting blogs, posting relevant content that would get SEO numbers.
And you had to learn all that too.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Yes.
It's something
like what's SEO?
There's still things I don't totally understand.
And you know a lot of languages, but you didn't know that one.
No. So it's that building a website once you're in the WordPress, which I use. It's not too hard to make edits, but it's also getting something to get hits on the searches, right? And getting your content to be seen by people online in the midst of all that is out there, right? So that's still remains something that I have to keep working at. I think
it's always a work in progress, and then as things change, you have to kind of keep up with things too. But no, I think that is definitely a big thing that hangs people up when they get into the coaching or consulting space, is they don't realize they're going to have to go out and get their own clients, and they're going to have to market, and they're going to have to learn to sell and close sales, and even structuring how they're going to sell their services. Did you work with someone to get started, or maybe several people to get started, or did you kind of take the path of figuring things out for yourself? I think it's always important for people to hear what has worked for others, so they can.
I got some tips from other educators who had done the same thing. So I heard a few, emails back and forth. I read through a couple of things. But I think when I first started, a lot of it was just the trial and error. And then I think more so actually when I got started with my podcast, because that was 3 years into it, more so then did I get connected with other educators who were kind of doing the podcast. So promoting it that way, promoting at least the podcast that way, and then people can find my website and my services through the podcast. So I think, it was actually pretty much on my own. And then I've connected with a lot more people, I would say, in the past 2 years. But there's other people, who, once you're connected to other people who are in the same space, who might be offering similar services, but not quite the same, then it helps also. We help each other out.
Yeah. Now, one of the things you said that you do, which is one of the things that I teach people to do, is to get out there and speak. And I think it's one of the fastest ways to really build your authority and build that know, like, and trust. And do you speak all over? Do you travel to speak, or do you kind of keep that in your local market? What is your process there?
About twice a year. I go out of state or somewhere, I'm in Colorado, so on the East Coast, for example. I would say the majority of the speaking is within the state.
Okay.
So I've done, work with schools and districts in conferences that are in the state or in the region, like New Mexico or Utah. But I'm very open to working with places that, require a plane ride to get to, just depending on places' needs. So, anybody's listening, I'm willing to travel.
Well, the one thing about schools is they're everywhere. So there probably are more than, there are more than you could even help. So I think that's a really important thing too, for people to kind of know what their market is and how big their market is and that kind of thing. Obviously, in the education space, it's easy to see that. When you go in and try to really figure out what they need, do you have some sort of an assessment that you offer, or what is that process for you? I love for people to be able to dive into other people's processes and see what that looks like.
So I refer them to my website, and I have different areas of professional development, like, is your staff, are they looking to develop their own personalized professional development plan? Are you going to ask your staff to, individualize their professional learning? So that's something, or could it be based on the classroom management aspect, or is it based on, leaders getting into classrooms? So I have them look at those offerings first, and then also kind of based on what I see from data. It could be their state assessment data. Sometimes they're looking for, teachers that can help with literacy strategies more, right? My background's foreign language and in English. So I can, help if they're looking for people that help with literacy strategies. So a lot of times it's just that conversation, them looking at my website, me looking at their website, talking to their administrator or, professional learning specialist about their needs, not necessarily an assessment. I mean, there's a Google form I'll send, just a short, questionnaire, but it's kind of just feeling, if we're the right fit, just that conversation in, email exchange and or questions.
Okay. And so you said, we talked a little bit before we started recording, and you said that you will go in and do a day with the school, or you'll do a week, or you'll do a month. So it sounds like you customize a lot of your packages and the amount of time that you spend with them. Do you coach as well? So you go in as a consultant, but do you also coach individually some of the teachers or the leaders?
Yes, if that's needed. I think a lot of schools, if they're looking for teacher coaching, you might have a group of new teachers, right, who are looking to increase student engagement, or looking to use certain strategies for language learning or literacy. So yeah, that's something I would offer. For leaders, a lot of leaders have trouble with time management if they want to get into classrooms. So talking to them about how they can best be visible in the school. I think that's happened a lot more in the past, I would say 4 to 5 years, with leaders getting into classrooms more. But yeah, for schools that feel, I think this is a time is prime for schools where either the teachers feel overwhelmed or the leaders feel they're overwhelmed, and they can't kind of structure like how the day is going to look in terms of where they're going to best use their time for this goal that they have. That's where that individual coaching comes in.
Okay. So you are really a all-around resource for them. It sounds like that you not only come with structured programs and things like that, but then to be able to work with them individually. So you're like what I call a coach consultant.
Yeah.
I would call myself the same thing. I do both. I tell people a lot of times what they need to be doing, and then I also ask the questions and coach them along as well. So, so how did you figure out? I like to talk about pricing and things like that. How did you really come to an understanding of how to price your services, especially because you did say you did have other people that you were kind of helping you along the way, but you weren't really working with someone in particular that was kind of giving you that step-by-step guidance. So how did you decide, how much do I charge for this, and how is this all going to work? The nuts and bolts of it.
It's based on like what a lot of other people in this realm are charging. Okay. So, and then the more experience you get and the more marketable you are, you can up the prices. But also you want to look at sometimes, look at if there is a rural district or a district that lacks funding, you might not charge as much because you see the need, right? So, you have to look at that aspect as well. But yeah, it's I think it's just the market. You look at that, and then so you don't just kind of base it on what you think. You need to talk with other people that are doing the same thing.
So do you like having your own business? Do you like being an entrepreneur? Is it all it was cracked that you thought it would be? And is it what, is it?
Well, I think being able to decide your own schedule is a good thing. That part of it, the part that you're kind of free to choose, pick and choose and reach out to places, that is a good part of it. As I mentioned earlier, the part with kind of, staying on top of the SEO and the marketing piece is challenging. So I would not say that's my favorite.
So do you do all of that yourself? You don't have a team or anyone that helps you?
One-woman show. I do some visuals. Sometimes I have somebody else do the visuals, but that's about it. When it comes to like the graphic artist work, I'm not that great at it. I do everything else myself. But yeah, I think just being able to reach out and work with schools, that's definitely a part I like doing, and getting experience with different types of schools and districts.
Yeah. Do you have your own program, your own structured program, or where it's really packaged in a particular order, or do you just kind of put something together when you go in and you see what the needs are?
So for the classroom management and the student engagement aspect, I do have more of a structured program that will be a 1 day or a full day, a half day, or a 2-day training. If they were only looking for something that was that long. For the other, the professional development, finding your own PD niche part, or the coaching school leaders to get into classrooms, that's more of a, finding out what their needs are and then structuring it to their needs. So, I would say the one that's most common for the teachers with that student engagement classroom management piece, that is structured, but it shifts kind of depending on what the school district needs. So, but I have some resources and workbooks that would come with some of those trainings. Did
you develop those yourself?
And no, I use some from another company.
Okay.
For those, for classroom management and student engagement.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's important for people to know too. Did you develop your own materials and your own programs, or are you using someone else's information and all?
Yeah. When it comes to slides, if the classroom management, student engagement, some of that's from the other company, but the other ones, the other offerings that I have, that's if it's just like a presentation or slides or worksheets, that's something I develop myself. But if you're talking workbooks and major, couple day long presentations, that's more, with the help of another company.
Okay. Now there are a couple ways to grow a business. And so have you thought about bringing other people under you, or do you like being solo? What is sort of your vision for your business, for your consulting business?
For now, I haven't really thought about any employees or anything like that. I think it just kind of depends where things go after this book is published, and watching my podcast grow and things like that. It might just be in terms of maybe having a part-time employee that's like a college student or something at some point. I know some people in this realm that use somebody to that degree when it comes to the marketing piece and the emailing and newsletter writing. They sometimes use a part-time employee for that.
Yeah. So how many hours do you actually work your consulting business? A week or a month? What is sort of your average?
I mean, it really varies depending on if I'm going out to training, right? I mean, there could be weeks when I only work 10 hours on this, and there could be weeks where it's 40 plus.
Okay. So, I think that's important for people to know too. Yeah. Kind of how others, what kind of time is involved, and then how much time would you say you actually work on the business side, on the business, not in the business? What do you think?
Oh, the marketing piece and just the finance piece. I would say a lot of that does go into the business side of it. But what I was going to mention also is kind of it ebbs and flows with the school year, because a lot of this is going to happen, in the month or so leading up to the start. Right. And up until November, there's going to be a lot of stuff in developing and reaching out to schools and all that. And then there's that lull around Christmas time. And then you have a lull. We're recording now at the end of April. You have a lull now at the end of the school year, because they're not looking for new professional development because staffing will change, right? Right. So, yeah, it really depends also on that time of year, but then getting resources together and, this time of year can be planning for to get together over the summer and reaching out to places in the summer.
Yeah. And so let's talk about that for just a minute. How long does it typically take you to get an engagement? So from the point of contact and now they say they want you, like how far out are things booked for you?
I would say average 3 months.
Okay.
And it could be just a back and forth message for a while. And then maybe I haven't heard back from them and it's been a month and then I'll contact them again. So some of it's just that kind of little nudge, right? But if somebody is interested, it usually isn't going to be more than 3 months between them contacting me or me contacting them and me actually coming out.
Okay. And so you also have your podcast. And one of the things we talked a little bit about that before we started recording. And she said she uses that to really elevate educators and showcase them, especially if they're authors and things like that. Talk a little bit about your podcast, Dana, if you want to, and promote that. And then how you know, all the different ways that you kind of use that in your business. Obviously, it helps your visibility. You probably get speaking engagements off of your podcast. So share with that a little bit as well.
So it's called Out of the Trenches. I started it in May of 2020. And as a recording, I have 157 episodes published. So it's based on educators' stories of resilience. I started during the pandemic, but, before then, there were a lot of educators that have been through trenches, right, throughout their educational journey.
I love the name too, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah, I love the name.
And so I always ask people, tell me about a time when you were in the trenches and managed to crawl out. And some people view trenches as a positive thing. They're working with students, they're getting their feet wet, hands on the ground, boots on the ground, so to speak, with those students. Some people view trenches as a negative thing. Like, I was in this awful situation in the school or whatever, right? And some people, say a couple of my first years of teaching or a student I had or a parent or something like that, right? So everybody has a different interpretation. So it's interesting to, hear that from them. And then whatever they have to share. I mean, I've talked to authors, people that have published 30 or 50 books in education, or people that have just published one, as myself. And I've also talked to, people that are leaders in the school or in a district. So superintendents, people that are helping educators also in the consulting area. So, I like to have a variety of just different people, highlight what they're doing and highlight kind of what they've been through in education, what they've learned from it. So
I love it.
Yeah, I feel it's my own form of professional development to have these conversations.
Right. I mean, you learn so much when it's just like me interviewing coaches and consultants. They all have different ways of doing things. They all have different things to share and different perspectives. And I think it's just really powerful for people to see things a lot of different ways and then, make the decisions that are going to be best for them, but to open their eyes to other ways of doing things. So I love that. Do you find that your podcast opens the door with a lot of these schools or districts that you would like to get into and be a part of their, part of their team and do your...
I probably would have to say no, because I think there's a lot of places that don't use podcasts as a learning tool yet.
Yeah.
Even though the general population listen to podcasts, I think there's still a lot of just general school leaders or district leaders that might not use that as a place to go to for information, right? So I think it's evolving. I can refer them to the podcast, but I think it's just kind of what I offer based on their needs is more, that the podcast is I would say a place that they can listen to kind of what I've done. But it's also, I'm highlighting other people's stories. So it's not necessarily a advertisement for me. So, but as I said earlier, it's given me the opportunity to connect with more people in this space, so I can, if I'm talking to a superintendent, I can ask kind of what are the needs of your district, or would you be interested in this? So I can use that maybe as a piece, but I'm not trying to necessarily sell my services when I haven't a person I interview on the podcast. So I kind of try to separate those two things.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to use a podcast. And I think that it can be your intention can be several things: to give back, to elevate your brand, to let people see more of you, building that visibility. All of those things are really powerful, but you can also use it to interview people where maybe you want to get the door open or get your foot in the door, and you build that relationship. So there's a lot of different ways that you can use a podcast. And I think people have to figure out what their strategy is going to be. I know you were talking strategy before, and strategies when you go into work with the school. So the same thing is true in business. But I love this. You've really shared a lot of good information. What are some of the obstacles that you feel people will go through with their coaching and consulting that you've kind of figured out, and it's no longer a problem for you, but you know that it's something that they will have to overcome at some point?
Well, and a lot of the time in educational spaces, especially in ed leadership, we talk about the imposter syndrome. So I think that's something, if people are wanting to speak and, consult with schools, they need to get over that fear of not being good enough.
Yeah.
That's a big piece. They need to realize they have that niche, they have something to share, and be able to put themselves on a pedestal. Educators are not ones to put themselves on a pedestal.
Right.
As I said, also that piece of, if you're not used to developing a website or marketing, make sure you ask other people who've done the same thing. Maybe you have a family member that can help you with that. Putting yourself out there and reaching out. The cold calling, I think that's a challenge for people. The cold emailing, right, and the follow-ups.
Right.
Kind of organizational piece, I think, making sure that you have, like, who have you contacted? Who have you heard back from?
Right.
This is taken. Who should you follow up with? Those types of things. So it's there's a lot of ducks you need to keep in a row. So
Yes.
it's making sure you have, and then you put this on your schedule. Like, I'm going to do this these days, right?
Right.
If this is what you're doing full time, it could get away from you if you don't have a set schedule and structure.
No, those are really valid points and really great tips to give people. It's not as easy as people think it is, right, to get started in the business. But, listening to things like this where you can hear what other people have gone through, I think can be really, really helpful. So, Dana, this is great. I know we could talk for a much longer period, but this has been really great. Is there anything else you would like to just share as we just wrap things up?
Well, I think there's always growth needed, right? And me just being in the educational space, I mean, whatever business you're in and whatever type of clientele you're working with, just know that, you're trying to promote that growth mindset. I think it's that Carol Dweck, that fixed mindset versus that growth mindset. So just, promote that mindset that, people can grow, get better, that there's new skills to be learned. There are a lot of people that are adapting now as we emerge from the pandemic.
Right.
And that, even if somebody has been in the profession for 30 years, there's always new tricks that they can learn to better serve whoever they're working with, whether it's
even just going from an employee mindset to now an entrepreneur mindset is a totally different game, right?
Yes. And it's also you can use some of the skills that you had from your previous career, right? But it's also learning new tricks if you are changing careers. So I think it's being open to failure as well, and being open to receiving no's or not hearing back from places. That happens a lot, not taking it personally.
Yeah. And you just have to keep pressing on, and you have to realize that for every one that says no or doesn't respond back, there is someone else out there that needs you and is interested in working with you. So this has been great. Thank you so much for that. And for everyone, I will put all of Dana's information with the show notes, with the podcast. You'll be able to reach out to her. She already said she's on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. So you can find her all of those places. Do you have a community or anything, Dana, on Facebook or any type of a group that you run where people can get connected with you or no?
Well, not as of right now. I mean, that does give me an idea. I might start a Facebook page at some point, but it's just contacting me. And I have a YouTube channel as well, just under my name for the podcast. And it has a couple of videos with my training on there. But yeah, definitely just reach out to me through the social media or my website, and you'll be able to hear more about what I'm doing.
And she likes to be on podcasts, be a guest on podcasts. So you can also book her as well and let her share on yours too. So Dana, thank you so much. And for everyone else, thank you for listening. And until next week, you all have an amazing day. God bless you. Bye-bye. If you've enjoyed this episode, I want to invite you to go check out a free training that I have at expertinu.us. It is a training that I have on how you can get ultra premium dream clients, scale your business, get more freedom, and really simplify your business and multiply your money. So go check that out. And again, that is expertinu.us. I want to thank you for being here with me this week. I hope you found massive value. Please always leave a comment, feedback, or a question. We check them all. And I want you to go rock your business and make sure you join us again next week. God bless you. Have an amazing day. Bye-bye.